Hello, how are you? I hope you're having a good day and life is treating you well. I'm Dell, your deck technician, and today we're going to go over Sheoldred the Apocalypse, a new commander from the Dominaria United set. Now before we go through the deck tech and figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to win, let's first figure out what in the world does Sheoldred even do. Sheoldred the Apocalypse is a 4/5 Phyrexian Praetor for 2 and 2 black with Death Touch. She states, whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. So as you can see with Sheoldred, we want our opponents to be drawing cards, and if we can help it, we're going to make them draw so much more cards. And yes, we're going to be helping everyone. We'll just be vibing and giving everyone their cards, but also taking their life at a cost. You know, just the way Black likes to do things, power at a cost. Now I want to do something a bit differently than I normally do in my previous videos. I want to actually go through and explain our Wincons first. I mean, we're giving our opponents a bunch of cards, and yes, it's 2 damage, but how can we really kill anybody with just 2 damage by drawing 1 or 2 cards a turn? The answer is quite simple. Well, our number one way to just completely delete one person would actually probably be Peered to the Abyss. Peered in the Abyss states, target player draws cards equal to half the number of cards in their library and loses half their life. Round it up each time. This is pretty simple. If they've got, let's say 30 life, they'll go down to 15 and then draw half their deck. As long as Sheoldred's on the field, for each card they draw, they'll lose 2 life, which would be more than 8 cards, so they'll just die right out. Another way to win the game was kind of the cheesy way, but as long as you see life gain and black color, you kind of see this coming. You can pair Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood. But it doesn't even have to be just Exquisite Blood. It can also be Veto, Thorn of the Black Rose, or Aperture of Blood, or the Defiant Bloodlord. Any of these cards paired up with Sanguine Bond would allow you to essentially delete one person. If you have multiple in the field, you can target each one at a different player and just delete them out the game as you draw cards and gain life. Though the best one to choose would definitely be the Marauding Blight Priest. The Marauding Blight Priest does the exact same thing as those other cards, but instead does damage to each opponent, allowing you to kill everyone at the same time. Now speaking of killing everyone at the exact same time, you can use the Psychosis Crawler that states whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Now we can pair in with the Lich's Mastery, which is very high risk, high reward, but very fun if you manage to pull it off. Lich's Mastery states, it has hexproof, you can't lose the game, and whenever you gain life, you draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lost, exile a permanent you control or a card from your hand or graveyard. When Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. Essentially, what will happen is whenever you would draw a card, you gain 2 life because of, Sheoldred. Then you would draw 2 cards because you gain 2 life. And then you would then keep going infinitely because you keep gaining life. And then you would essentially draw your entire deck. And each time you draw a card, Psychosis Crawler would deal 1 damage to everyone on the field, killing them all. Now, the best thing about all these Wincons is that they can be mixed and matched to get you your best victory. You can mix up Peer into the Abyss with Psychosis Crawler and kill everyone that way. Or you can take a Lich's Mastery and then pair it up with an Exquisite Blood. That way whenever you draw a card, you gain life and you keep that cycle going and you kill them from either the damage from Sheoldred or damage from Exquisite Blood, whichever triggers first. And there you have it. Those are like the plethora of ways you can go in and just take this game for the win, not including the other cards we have in our deck that can aid us even more so. These are just the most common ways you're likely to win. Now that we know what pieces of the deck we need for our instant wins, let's go through our deck and figure out what other cards we can use to synergize with Sheoldred, starting mostly with our creatures, as they typically make a bulk of the deck. Bloodgift Demon states at the beginning of our upkeep, target player draws a card and loses 1 life. We can target ourselves so we can draw a card and gain 2 life and lose 1, netting us +1, or we could target another player and make them lose 3 life. Elder Brain is a 7-cost card, pretty expensive, but what it does is amazing. Whenever it attacks, target player exiles all cards from that player's hand, then they draw that many cards. You may play lands and cast spells from among the exiled cards for as long as they remain exiled. If you cast a spell this way, you may spend mana as though if it was mana of any color to cast it, allowing you to cast bangers from their decks, and even if you attack someone else that has an open field, you can target another player and make them discard their entire hand. With as many cards as we're allowing them to draw, they're going to lose so much life and give us so many of their cards that we can cast. Fate Unraveler is essentially our commander, but weaker. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Reveler deals 1 damage to that player. Not much here, just synergy. Rankle, Master of Pranks, is a 3/3 flying haste fairy that states whenever it deals combat damage, we may choose any number of these options. The options are each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life and draws a card, and each player sacrifices a creature. Saison, Perverter of Truth, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player loses 2 life and draws 2 cards. So at the beginning of their upkeep, they'll get 2 additional cards, which is awesome, and only 2 life. But whenever they draw those 2 cards, Sheoldred makes sure they lose 4 life. So 2 cards and 6 life every turn. Doom Whisperer is a 6/6 flying trample that allows us to pay 2 life and surveil 2, meaning we can look at the top 2 cards of our library and then put any number in the graveyard if we don't want it there, which is not card drop or card selection, and paying 2 life won't mean anything considering we're gaining so much life with all the cards we'll be drawing. Erebos, God of the Dead, is the 5/7 indestructible god that states that it's not a creature unless its devotion to black is 5 or more. Our opponents can't gain life, and we can pay 1 black and 2 life to draw a card. Once you draw the card, if our commander's out, we'll gain 2 life. So we'll be right back where we started, and it's an indestructible source of card draw. This is really good. Phyllis, Broker of Blood, is an absolute staple in this deck, and he's gross. He is an 8/8 flying demon that states whenever you play 1 black and 2 life, target player gets -1/-1 to the end of the turn. Whenever you lose life, you draw that many cards. So we pay 1 black, lose 2 life, put a -1/-1 on someone. Then we draw 2 cards because we paid 2 life, and then we gain 4 life because we gain 2 life for each card we drew, allowing us to just keep doing this and keeping our life healthy, and possibly killing the creature on the field. His only downfall is the fact that he's 8 mana. Witch of the Moors is a 4/4 Death Touch Human Warlock that states at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. This is a no-brainer. We'll be gaining 2 life each turn when we draw a card, and we'll get to kill a creature on the battlefield and bring back a creature from our graveyard to our hand. And it has Death Touch, making it a really good defender. This card's really great and can literally come out the next turn after Sheoldred comes out. Vanquished Coven is essentially the exact same thing. It's a 3/3 vampire warlock with menace that states whenever you gain life, you may pay black. If you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It's not as powerful as the Witch of the Moors, but it is cheaper, and with menace allows you to attack and do some damage to a player and make it a little bit harder to block. And obviously the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. There's literally no reason no one didn't see this coming. It's a mono black deck. Of course we're going to put in the Grey Merchant Asphodel. If you don't know what it does, when Grey Merchant Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. No brainer. The next topic of interest is going to be our artifacts. A lot of these cards are going to be basically allowing everyone on the board to draw, so that way everyone, us and players included, can reap those benefits. First one up is the Font of Mythos. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws 2 additional cards. That's everyone. So we'll get 2 cards, we'll get to gain 6 life, and our opponents will get 2 cards and lose 6 life. That seems like a fair trade. Honor Greed is an amazing addition to this deck. It states whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. And playing lands is essential to the game, so they'll just be playing the game, drawing cards, and just dying just a little bit inside. So that's really good, especially if you're going against a landfall deck. And this is coming from a person who has 4 Omnath decks and currently working on a 5th. This card would have ruined me, and I wouldn't even care. Howling Mine is another auto-include. At the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. This one, just another simple way of everyone getting the benefits of drawing the card. See, this deck is not so bad. We just want everyone to draw a card, everyone to be happy. It's just the cost of an extra 2 life. What's 2 life, right? Temple Bell is another one, just for 3 mana. You have an artifact on the field that you can tap and everybody draws a card. Just good old feel goods. Now, Teferi's puzzle box is absolutely gross. It states at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player puts the cards in his or her hand onto the bottom of his or her library in any order, then draws that many cards. You got 5 cards in hand? Cool. Put 5 cards in the bottom of the library, draw 5 cards, and then draw for turn. That's good 12 life. Don't worry about it. Get a whole new hand though, right? Next up to the enchantment sections, and honestly, this section is extremely simple and pretty straightforward. A lot of these do the exact same thing with slight twists. Black Market Connections, Greed, and Phyrexian Arena all allow us to draw cards giving certain stipulations. Black Market Connections is an enchantment that states during your pre-combat main phase, you can choose one or more. Pay 1 life to gain the treasure, pay 2 life to draw a card, or pay 3 life to get a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter token. You could pay 6 life to get all 3. It'll give you a treasure, a card, and you'd get a shapeshifter. And then once you draw a card, you'd gain 2 life as long as Sheoldred's on the field, basically paying 4 life for all 3 of these. And if you don't want that and you just want to draw a card, you can draw an extra card, lose 2 life, and then gain 2 life right back again. So it just pays for itself essentially. Phyrexian Arena states at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Again, this is no brainer. You draw a card, you lose 1 life, and then you gain 2 life from Sheoldred, and then your draw step, you draw a card and gain 2 life again. So you draw 2 cards and you gain 3 life with Phyrexian Arena on the field. No brainer. Greed is the only one that doesn't trigger automatically, but the upsides is you can pay 1 black, pay 2 life, and draw a card. As long as you have black mana, you can just dump a bunch of mana to this at the end of your opponent's turn, draw a bunch of cards to see what you can get for your next turn. Now for the non-drawing card enchantments, we got the Phyrexian Reclamation, which basically says you pay 1 in the black, pay 2 life, and return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Just like the Witch of the Moors and the Vane Witch Coven, this allows us to grab cards from the graveyard and bring it back to our hand, but because of its enchantment, it makes it a bit more sticky on the field. And the last enchantment I have is the Underworld Dreams, which essentially does exactly what Sheoldred does. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Underworld Dream deals 1 damage to that player. It's just a bit of redundancy, so that way we can kill them a bit faster. Next up on the list would be Instant and Sorceries, and I typically run a lot of removal in my decks, so my deck tech came up with a lot of like kill cards and board wipes in case things go bad, and then going from there. But of the ones that I have that synergize really well with the deck, one would be Damnable Pact. Damnable Pact states that target player draws X cards and loses X life. With this, you can draw yourself a bunch of cards and gain a bunch of life if you need it, or you can target someone else and just remove 1 person from the game. Additionally, we have Dark Deal, that states each player discards all the cards in their hands and then draws that many cards -1. So if you got a bunch of cards, let's say 5 or 6 cards in hands, everyone discards and draws 4 to 5 cards and just loses a bunch of life at once, including yourself, but you won't lose that life. You'll just gain a bunch of life because it's Sheoldred. Now last up is going to be Sign in Blood. Now I know this isn't some like, oh snap deck tech, just because I know anyone who runs black, if you don't have a lot of card draws, you're gonna run Sign in Blood because it's a really good card. However, with Sheoldred, we could target 1 person and make them lose 6 life, or target ourselves, gain 2 life, and draw 2 cards for a measly 2 mana. It's just way too good to not at least mention. And just to let you know, I didn't forget it. Now the last section I want to talk about, I guess I'm gonna call it like a sleepers, or maybe like the honorable mentions or whatever is along those lines. These are cards that I found that were interesting and could work if you want to make your deck just a bit different than the others, but still work with Sheoldred in some janky kind of way. May not be the best of cards, but cards that I at least found interesting. Bloodthirsty Aerialist is a 2/3 flying rogue vampire that states whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Every time you draw a card and Sheoldred is out, you'll gain life. She'll get stronger, you swing in and bot people. And with flying, it gives her a bit of evasion, making her harder to be blocked. Now, if she gets big enough, she's going to be the target of your targeted removals and not Sheoldred, making her a good decoy so that way they kill her and not your actual commander. Archfiend of Despair is a whopping 8 mana for a 6/6 flying demon that states your opponents can't gain life, and at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equals to the life they lost this turn. Now, this guy, he's something I may not want to put in here, but I personally like him because if we got our creatures on the field and our commander, then they can lose anywhere between 2 to like 5 life for drawing cards each turn, and when they do, then they're going to lose that much life again at the end of each of their steps, not including whatever I make them lose when on my turns for forcing them to draw cards. So this can add up really quickly. The only problem is for 8 mana, we don't want to have too many things in there, and Villas is definitely the better pick. Howling Golem to me was awesome. It is a 3-cost golem that is 2/3 that states whenever Howling Golem attacks or block, each opponent draws a card. For 3 costs, you can play this out in turn 3, and then turn 4, play your commander, and then you can attack, everyone draws a card, they each lose 2 life, you gain 2 life, and you got value right there immediately for Sheoldred. Mask of Grizzlebrand. Now this one is one that I've actually thought about for quite some time. It states, equipped creature has flying and lifelink. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, and where X is its power, if you do, draw X cards, which is great because if we can get this on our Bloodthirsty area list as she gets stronger and stronger, when she dies, we'll just pay that life and then draw those many cards and gain all that life right on back and then some. This card is actually a sleeper that I think people should nudge on. Memory Jar is a 5-cost artifact that states tap it, sacrifice it, and each opponent exiles the cards in their hands face down and then draw 7 cards. At the beginning of the next end step, each player then discards that hand and then returns their original hand back to their hand that was exiled. Now this card will allow you to just do instantly 14 damage to everybody and allows you to get rid of 7 cards from the library if you use it during someone else's end step. And then boom. Done. It chunks damage. My only caveat for this is that it sacrifices itself, so it's not repeatable. So that's the only thing that I'm not really liking about it. Mind Slicer is a 4/3 horror for 2 black and 2 that states whenever it's put in the graveyard from play, each player discards his or her hand. So that way, all the cards we've been giving them, this is a way to get rid of all of those cards and try to get people to not want to do a board wipe, because if they do, then they'll lose all the sweet answers we gave them. And the last guy on this list is Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted. Now this one is a planeswalker that states whenever an opponent draws a card, Obnixilis, Hate Twisted deals 1 damage to that player. We've seen this before, but you can -2 him to destroy target creature. Its controller draws 2 cards. So we can get rid of any problematic creature and make someone lose 4 life as well. So this guy's, the only thing that sucks about him is that we can't add any counters to him, but I still like the fact that we can have him out there and just yeet something off the board while actually still doing damage for drawing cards. And there you have it. That's the deck tech that I will put together with Sheoldred, the Apocalypse. As always, I'll put my version of the deck tech in the description down below so you could see it and maybe tweak it if you want to make any ideas. But if you do have any ideas that you would do differently, let me know in the comment section down below. If you think any of these combos aren't worth trying off or any of the creatures just are better off in different decks, let me know. Now, if I had any deck to make from Dominaria, Sheoldred would be the deck that I would make. It's the one that I find most interesting and the one I wanted to make. Strictly because I wanted to make a Nekusar deck for quite some time, but just never got around to doing it, and Sheoldred is the closest thing to that. But I wouldn't make it over a Nekusar deck, just I would make her betterly a part of the 99 of the Nekusar deck. Now mind you, that doesn't mean Sheoldred is bad in any way, it's just my personal preferences because I like blue. So that's pretty much that. But if you do like this deck tech, please hit that like button and subscribe down below for more deck tech videos, and hopefully soon we can get some gameplay videos on the channel as well, if that's something you're interested in. Anyhow, I'm out of here. Have a great night. Stay safe, stay awesome, and make sure you get those dubs. Bye.